Hey guys, Walking Dead recap, Season 5, Episode 1, called No Sanctuary. Let's get to it. So everybody got captured at Terminus. Now this is every group except the group of Carol, Therese, and Judith, with also the exception of Beth, who got away in that black car. So we get a flashback of Gareth and the other guy, and we kind of get a sense of how this kind of turned into what Terminus is today. And it's, the fact that, it was originally a sanctuary, but then, people came and they raided and they raped people, and so they had to take it back. So the mantra of this episode is you're either the butcher or you're the cattle. And so we see how Garrett and the other guys kind of got to be this way. So they're in the little shed in the trail car. They're trapped in there, and they're getting buckles and belts and any sharp things that they can use to attack. But before they can attack, they get gassed. And so we got Rick, Daryl, Glenn, and Bob, who's the new black guy who's kind of with Sasha now. And they all get captured, and they get taken to the little trough. And apparently what they do is they slice their heads open and collect all their blood for the blood supply. It's very gross, very graphic, not very good, because they get to the first four guys, and then it gets to Glenn, and you're like, no, Glenn! And then the guy's like, hey, wait, what's your quota? And then it's like, oh, thank God. And he's like, all right, continue. And he's got the bat, and you're like, no, Glenn! And then an explosion. And you're like, what happened? To explain the explosion, we have to go back. We go back to Carol and Therese, who are with Judith, walking away from their farm, where they just had to kill Lizzie because she killed Mika. And that whole thing, look at the flowers, really dramatic. But, we got to see a lot of Carol's character and how she's been doing since being exiled by Rick. So Carol's kind of taking the lead here, because Therese is like, whoa, I don't know if I can kill anybody just yet. And Carol's like, you have to. This guy is called Martin, and Carol overhears him talk about Michonne and Carl, and she realizes that they got captured by Terminus. So Carol and Therese saw a huge herd of walkers on their way, so they know that they're in trouble. And so Carol goes to Terminus to try to help them, leaving Therese in the shed with Martin and Judith. Martin's just the biggest jerk on the planet. He just doesn't stop talking, and eventually he gets his hands around Judith's neck, and he says, if you don't go out into the herd of walkers without any weapons, I will snap her neck. Jerk! And so Therese does go out, and you're like, that's done. He's dead. Bye-bye, Therese. Sorry, Sasha. And then he comes back. Turns out he slaughtered all of those walkers with his bare hands. And then he kills Martin. Good riddance, that guy. Judith's safe. Hooray. Now let's get back to Carol. So we heard the explosion, right? So Rick and the gang get to escape, and Rick is turning really ruthless. Gareth tried to interrogate Rick about the bag of guns and stuff and things, as Rick put it, that he knows that he buried out there in the forest by, threatening Bob with the knife. Rick's like, yeah, there's a machete in there, and that's what I'm going to use to kill you. He's just getting really ruthless. It's kind of going back to the old Rick, who was just like so impulsive, because last season or the season before he was just kind of dead inside. But now we're seeing that fire again. It's starting to get a little out of control like it was. So he's telling everybody to kill them on sight, and to leave the guy, not to, chop his head off, just leave him to turn. Okay, so once they get everybody out of Terminus, of the area, Rick's like, we gotta get our weapons, we gotta go back and kill them all, because they don't deserve to live. And this is his new Rick attitude. And everyone's like, we don't want to do that, like Maggie and Glenn, and they're all like, they'll run off or die. And the thing is, like, there was an explosion. Like, the walkers were on fire, and they were biting people. They were fire walkers. So here's the kicker. Here's what the explosion was. It was Carol, because she took the firecrackers from Martin, and she set them off, and she shot the gas tanks, which was really smart, and then she shot off the fireworks, and boom, explosion, fire everywhere. It was crazy, mass chaos, in which Rick and the gang were able to escape, and it's how she got in, got the stuff, got people safe, and then got out. While she was in there, she was in the candle room, and there's this woman, Mary, and she kind of gives the whole lowdown on how Terminus became what it is, which is hinted at, obviously, in the first flashback that we got. And she kind of, well, they get into a woman fight. You know, they're just like wrestling on the floor. It's pretty cool. And Carol's just kicking butt, man. Whoo, Carol, she opens the door, and a herd of walkers come in, all ablaze, and they start to eat her. And she's laying on the ground defenseless because Carol shot her. She just leaves her to get eaten. Ugh, crazy. Then the real best part of the episode comes when she reunites with the gang. And so she walks up, and the gang has just undug their weapons bag. And Daryl turns around, sees her, and he runs to her and gives her a big hug that lasts, I swear, for 5 minutes. And the entire rest of the gang, which now includes, you know, Glenn and Maggie, and Glenn's crew with General Ford and Eugene Smarty Pants and Susie Crabgrass, Sasha and Bob and Michonne and Carl. Everybody's just watching him hug her and lift her off the ground, and oh, the emotions. You can see they're both like so happy and they're getting teary. This is Daryl. He doesn't get emotional. He doesn't get teary. But for Carol, he does. Oh, so beautiful. And then, you know, Rick hugs her and says, "You did that? You got us out? Thank you. So, Carol, consider yourself unbanished." Another great reunion happens when Rick and Carl are reunited with Judith, because they thought that the baby was dead. You know, they saw the blood on her car seat or whatever, and they were like, "Oh, Judith, she's gone." But it was Tyrese who took her, and so that was a great, great reunion. Beth is still MIA. The bad guys at Terminus are still at large, probably. And then we got at the very end a shot of Morgan in a mask, so he may be coming back. So Morgan's coming back. Terminus might still be a threat, or at least the guys from Terminus are still a threat. We got Beth to find, and next week we're going to a priest. So here's for a great season. The first episode did extremely well. It blew over last season's premiere's ratings. Like, so many people watched this episode. And the show deserves it because it's awesome. So until next week.